Welcome to the Hustle or Bust podcast powered by Paverart. Our mission is simple: to dive deep into the world of entrepreneurship, small business, and all the success, struggle, and challenges that need to be confronted in the pursuit of growth. We celebrate the entrepreneurial spirit, but perhaps most important, we want you to learn at least one idea that you can put into action immediately to make your investment in time worthwhile. Today's episode, we dive into the great Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000-hour theory of building expertise. But we need to warn you, we went a bit off the rails. Then we covered a new economic principle in the world of pricing after discovering a product that was mispriced at a New Jersey Turnpike rest stop. I kid you not, it was diarrhea medicine. Then we have a fun review of Ancestry.com. Not much to do with entrepreneurship, but some interesting male-female learnings we had fun with.
All right, so we're both Gladwellian fans. Malcolm Gladwell.
I am a major Gladwell fan.
You're in Tipping Point?
I finished it. I'll be finishing Tipping Point tonight.
But you started with Outliers, right?
I started with Outliers, went to Tipping Point. In between, I read about 10 chapters in Blink. And
so we're converted. We're Gladwellian.
Exactly. My
fanatics.
next book's going to be What the Dog Saw. So
yeah. All right. So in Outliers, I think it's Outliers. It might be the 10,000-hour rule.
Outliers.
Okay. Correct me if I'm wrong from your understanding, but it's basically to get excellence in anything, you've got to put 10,000 hours of defined, purposeful practice into it.
That's evidently been studied and proven.
And it's been proven. He's got data to back it up.
Correct.
The story that you would know that you could recount well was it the Beatles? Talk about your nut.
It locked me in for the rest of the book.
So how does it relate to the Beatles, the 10,000-hour rule? Well,
the idea here is that when these guys started out, none of them could barely play their instruments. I'm exaggerating for effect, but they're getting together at parties, at church socials and things like that. And when they met each other, one guy knew a little bit more about playing, he knew 6 more chords than the other guy knew, and it just evolved from that. But between that time period, I think it was, 57, 58, 59, and 1964 when they broke out. Actually, it would have been 62, 63 when they started to break out. But anyway, to make a long story short, they spent a tremendous amount of time on the road playing. Hamburg is that's the famous destination.
Right.
They would be playing 4 shows a day, 6 days a week, that kind of thing.
And what's a show? 2 hours or?
It could be up to 2 hours. It could be an hour.
So they're playing 8 hours a day, 6 days a week for how many? How long?
And this went on for years. This went on for a number of years, and before you knew it, they became one hell of a band.
In sync with each other.
And they spent so much time together that 10,000 hours was spent in close proximity to each other all the time. They slept together, they ate together, they played together. But, and when you're consumed with that one thought, we are going to play music and we're going to do this, and that was their goal. 10,000-hour rule really plays well into that, because by the time 1964 rolls around, who are the Beatles and why are they so damn good? And it didn't stop there.
Well, 6 days a week, 8 hours a day.
But
X number of years.
It didn't stop in 64.
Right.
It didn't stop until 1970.
Right.
So you've got another 6 years there where they're producing. And by the way, every year they're coming out with music that is more, that's more complex and more interesting and more diverse than the previous year. So that 10,000-hour rule just plays into that very, very well.
It's pretty daunting, I think, when you think about it. It's a lot of hours, right?
Oh, sure.
That's the equivalent. You can do the math. If you're going to do, let's break out the calculator.
Well, let's start with Paverart.
Right.
Okay. Paverart we're going into our 20th year. We started in March of 2003. So March of 2022, we were 19 years old. So we're now going into our 20th year.
Let's use 20 hours a week, because how Gladwell defines it, I believe, is practice, right?
Yep.
Not just going through the motions,
Right.
but real defined practice.
Exactly.
So let's say a business that's operating 40 hours a week. Let's be generous. It's probably not 20 hours of practice.
In our case, it's life and death practice.
Right. Let's say 20 hours a week was practice. So take 10,000 divided by 20, and what do you get?
Well, you're going to get 500.
So that's 500 weeks you need. If you're going to practice, that's a lot of weeks. That's 10 years, right?
Exactly right. And we've been around for
20.
Almost 20. So
now we're a new technology, so we really needed the practice. What we did was never brought into the world.
That's a good point. That's exactly right. And again, you had three diverse people that came together to start the business, but each one of them had accumulated their own 10,000 hours
within their
in their own specialty.
Right.
Okay. Now they had to adapt to something that Mick knew better. Mick knew more about this than any of us did, but still, he
needed a business model.
He needed a business model. He'd never run a manufacturing concern before. I didn't know anything about pavers. He knew more about pavers than anybody. Literally knew than anybody. Mick was an expert on pavers. The accounting, the administrative end, the organization and structural end. Dealing with the government. Dealing with taxes and all that stuff. My brother's an expert there. So you basically had three 10,000-hour guys in their own specialties come together and start a whole new model.
And then collectively
of 10,000 hours. Exactly right.
To develop what is now Paverart.
Exactly.
Now think about it. If you're a 17, 18-year-old kid graduating high school, the 10,000-hour rule, if you believe it, which it's proven, it's kind of daunting, right? You've got 10 years of practice to become expert or excellent at something.
Exactly.
So number one thing says you got to start right away. Pick a goal versus just meandering through the lost decade, right?
Exactly.
Pick something that you want to become an expert at. It could be just excellent as a small business manager, big business manager, computer programmer. It doesn't matter what it is, but start to pursue something and start practicing at it and then stay at it. Because the payoff might be 10 years down the road.
You didn't know anything about the manufacturing process when you bought L&M Foods. Is that safe to say?
About manufacturing food or
about manufacturing anything?
Oh no, I was a deep manufacturing experience. I didn't know anything about the category.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, well I
never heard of the category.
That's kind of what I meant.
But I think there's a corollary. Go ahead.
No. I want to hear what you have to say. Go
ahead. The 10,000-hour rule, because yours is interesting with Mick, you, and Ken. You each had 10,000 hours in different disciplines that came together.
Correct.
And you applied it to something like this.
Right.
I didn't know I never heard of the category called surimi seafood. Never knew what it was. But I did have sales, marketing, and manufacturing. Right. And was able to adapt it pretty quick and learn the intricacies of surimi in a way that made sense. But I had manufacturing experience. What the craft of business is.
Well, how about experience in personnel?
Multicultural, no. Zero.
Yeah. That's that.
Not deep. And
so you're starting with 0 hours.
Yeah, so I think that's a fair statement.
Yeah.
Because it was a all-Korean plant at the senior management level and all Hispanic at the workforce level.
Gotcha, at the operational level.
My deep dirt under the nails experience in that world was very limited. Maybe 100 hours. Maybe. So that was the risk, is could you adapt to that?
You probably got your 10th. Judging from the amount of time you spent every day, 7 days a week, you probably got your 10,000 hours in the first year.
Yeah. I think look, it's a great rule. I mean, 10,000-hour rule. The Gladwell, the Beatles is a great example. And I am not musically inclined, but I got to think if I'm spending 7 hours in clubs a day with my band, different venues, some that are friendly, some that are not friendly, 6 days a week for X number of years, how can you not get better? Expertise. I mean, that is it's a very clear example.
He is also clear. He's also careful to point out that those people that get to be experts at those, I mean, tops of their field, Mount Rushmore type people in their field that have adhered to that 10,000 hour rule. It's 10,000 hours is important, but the other part that's important is they've got to have a proclivity for that.
A talent, right.
Okay, a talent for it. And
yeah, I could spend 10,000 hours shooting hoops. I ain't ever going to be LeBron.
That's right.
Not going to happen.
You know, it's the bane of my existence that
Right.
I started taking accordion lessons when I was 6. Okay, I didn't stop until I was 16. 10 years I took accordion lessons, and you know,
Accordion.
That's
And the
there's
real
certain
question
people-
is, why do you admit it?
That's it. You're killing the mood.
Sorry.
You're killing the mood, Olivia. But there's what's interesting about that is and again, it's got nothing to do with me. It's got everything to do with the fact that it took me 10 years to realize that I was never going to be a professional musician, because there are certain things that you require to be a professional musician. And if, let's say,
What's the pinnacle of an accordion? Just
the Lawrence Welk Show. The Lawrence Welk Show.
Because the Beatles, I'm a Beatles fan. They never had the squeeze box, did they?
The Lawrence Welk Show or the Mummers Parade in Philadelphia, one of the two. But
That's the Super Bowl.
On one day a year, there's 19,000 accordion players in Philadelphia that show up. That's where
It's big stuff.
I think that's where the Accordion Hall of Fame is.
And you know it.
That's right.
That's what you were going for.
That's right. Oh, I have one of those. At any rate, however, again, it's the bane of my existence. My cousin, Greg, actually made a living as a musician. Stopped all that when he got married, but
What was his instrument?
keyboards.
Okay.
And he started out on drums and migrated to keyboards, the piano. But he has it, okay? Whatever those defining qualities are of somebody who can sit behind something, hear a melody, and play it.
Right.
He has that.
God-given
I don't
talent.
have that.
Right.
You put a piece of music in front of me. I mean, if they had accordions in the Philadelphia Philharmonic, I think I'd be good. Okay, but they don't. You know, they got oboes and violins and violas, but no accordions. I think that's downright discriminatory. But make a lot. Why wouldn't you have an accordion? I can make the sound of every one of those damn instruments by just pushing a button on the side of the accordion. But
Hey, why'd you? I can never imagine. Hey, why'd you pick up the accordion? Chicks dig it.
Oh my God!
Chicks dig the accordion.
Oh my God! Oh my God! That's
funny.
Well, first of all, I'm half Italian. That's the most important reason why I played the accordion. But my mother is very talented. She's a very, very talented piano player, and whatever musical aptitude I have, I certainly got that from her. I never got it. I don't think anybody in my dad's family ever picked up an instrument. Although my dad fashioned himself as a drummer. And
Well, I guess the Gladwellian 10,000 hours is. You got to recognize what is your proclivity.
Well,
what is your natural talent?
again, I did it. I practiced every day. I went to lessons once a week. I went to a lesson once a week. I did this for 10 years, and I got pretty damn good at the accordion. I can play the accordion pretty well. And what's interesting is I can pick it up now and I can play something for you. Okay. However, that you're only going to go so far.
Right.
If you only have so much. Okay. You can practice until your fingers fall off.
Right.
Actually, they did. My fingers were much longer than this before I started playing the accordion. So these little stubbly things, these little sausages, they were much longer than this. At any rate, to make a long story short, but it's an interesting point. Greg, applying the same amount of time,
We'll go further. Right.
will go much further. He made a living out of doing that, and to this day, my respect for him as a musician far surpasses my respect for him as a human being.
We got to have Greg on.
I know Greg he's one of the best people you're ever going to want to meet, and of course I'm just kidding about what I just said, but there's a musician. That's what I define as a musician. If you can do what Greg can do on a keyboard, a guitar, you're a musician. And the 10,000 hour rule applies to everybody, and regardless of what you do. But if you're going to be really, really good at it, you've got to have other things involved, not just the 10,000 hours.
Right.
So, great point.
So we're at the, we stop in at the, what do you call it? What was that place? The rest stop. And we're looking at the prices. I forgot deodorant, so I had to stop in and get deodorant, right? Him and I, we hit the boys' room. And we're looking at the front thing. I found a deodorant, and then there's anti-diarrheal. And I'm looking at the prices, diarrhea medicine. It was priced.
That's what they called it.
Yeah, anti-diarrheal. You know, guess what the price was?
I couldn't even hazard a guess.
Well, if you had a price, diarrhea medicine, anti-diarrhea, what would you price it at?
I don't know. If you're getting it's a little box like
Little
that,
box.
maybe $3.
Oh, you're different. It was $3.19. So you're right.
Oh, you're kidding.
I thought, why is that not priced at $9.99? Think about it. You're on the New Jersey Turnpike. Diarrhea medicine. Is there anything more urgent than that? Why wouldn't you try and get $10 for that?
Ladies and gentlemen, we're rewriting the laws of macro and microeconomics.
Clearly, I'm in a minority. You were
It's
right on the
not
money.
just supply and demand.
It's urgency.
It's urgency.
I mean, so I thought that was odd.
Supply.
Why not be $9.99? I'm looking at it. The deodorant was $3.19 too, by the way.
We got plenty of supply, but you can only get it at the Howard Stern rest stop.
Are you going to be picky?
You
Either need it or you don't.
On the New Jersey Turnpike. Oh my God!
I mean, they had the Snickers bar was $1.99. Snickers bar $3.99,
which causes the diarrhea.
I thought it was mispriced. It was a missed opportunity. So here's a story for you. A funny, serious story. My good buddy Angelo went to school with him, right? I think owns a restaurant, right? We're talking yesterday about his business, the challenges with running a restaurant business. And he's talking about putting a bar in a restaurant. I'm like, well, that's got to be, what, 90% margins? He goes, no. I didn't know. He goes, you might be 35% liquor costs, premium liquor and a drink. I thought they were making 90% on that. He's only making 65% or 70%, a lot less than I thought. So we're talking about that. And he starts asking me questions about Paverart. And he studied mechanical engineering, brilliant guy. And he runs multiple restaurants, family's in the food business. He starts asking me, he goes, I don't know how you run your business if it's you try and do 100 square feet a day. And I'm like, well, you're actually not too far from that. It's pretty close. Mm-hmm. And he's talking about, we're both struggling with the same things. Labor, how do you find good labor and recruiting talent? He's like 5 people short. We're maybe 1. He goes, well, what are your lead times? He goes, do you ever miss jobs because your lead times are too long? I'm like, no, we'll never miss a job. We'll just quote him 12 weeks when it used to be 8 weeks or whatever it is. He goes, well, you haven't lost any revenue? And he stops me cold, and I'm like, well, we probably have. If a customer wants something in their backyard and we don't have the inventory on the shelf, and we're going to tell them 12 weeks, whether it's a retrofit or not, we probably lose, I don't know, if I had to guess, maybe $15,000 a year because our lead times are so far out or farther than they used to be. He goes, well, how do you plan for it? I go, what do you mean, Ange? He goes, well, if you do 100 feet per day, and he's starting to attack it like an engineer.
Right.
He goes, couldn't you just say, all right, if your capacity is 100 a day and you've got 1,000 square feet of orders and you got 100 a day, it feels like 10 days worth of production, and maybe you shouldn't be quoting 12 weeks if you can quote 11 days worth of production. Or you can say that your residential is more urgent, and you can not give them any lead time, say you'll get it done in a week, and then your other ones, you got to give you 26 weeks on that case. He goes, you don't do that? I said, Andrew, that will require forethought and actual management of the business. So we don't do that. So he breaks out laughing. So here's the other story. Did I tell you about our 23andMe? Have you ever heard of these DNA what are they called?
Ancestry.
Ancestry.com.
Well, they're the 2 big ones. Ancestry's number 1.
Have you done this?
23andMe. Yes, I've done Ancestry.
Did you learn anything from it? Or?
I don't care.
Me neither.
I'm sorry.
You're the same, just like me. I don't give a shit.
My daughter's going to kill me for saying this because I think she and her husband gave us, a subscription to Ancestry, which I absolutely did. But I get so far and I go,
can't do it.
I got too many other things to do. I'm sorry. It's just, but anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Kim was hell-bent on taking it with Dom. She did it with you and Hope, or just you, Dom?
Just me.
All right, so Kim decides to get, it was 23andMe, I think, right?
Ancestry.
Or ancestry. That's the second time you said that.
It's easily the most popular one of the two. I
So
think.
you spit in a cup, you send it off, right? It's pretty easy, and then they come back with this full analysis of your family's from this region of Italy. So I'm like, look, I don't need to take that. I grew up in an Italian family, 100%. Mom's from
Everybody says that.
Sicily. Right, exactly. So mom's from Sicily, dad's from Concordia. I'm 100% Italian. And no, I'm not taking that fucking test because there's only a downside with it. When you're 100% and your identity's tied up around being 100%, you know where this is going, right? When you're 100% Italian, there's only downside to taking that test, if that's what you believe, based on how you grew up.
That's exactly
Grew
right.
up in an Italian family, so we take the. I didn't take the test, but Dominic did it. So he's got half of my DNA, right? Mm-hmm. So he's got to be 50% Italian.
You'd think it would work that way.
Right, I'm 100% Italian. What were you when you got the freaking results?
40.
He was 40, which implies that I'm 80% Italian. And I'm like, oh, fuck, here we go. So Kim's all over it. She thought she was 30% Spanish from her Perez.
Sure.
Which is like 2% Spanish or whatever. So I'm like, Jesus Christ. So I knew this is why I didn't want to get involved in this. You're putting this shit in front of me. And it looked pretty. Now, what was interesting about the data was it showed Sicily, it showed all different regions of Italy, which were true. But they were missing 20% if I'm truly 100% Italian. Or I'm not.
I guess,
So I text Jenny, Desiree, my two sisters, and my parents. And I'm like, has anyone heard of this shit, 23andMe or Ancestry.com? And they're like, yeah. Did anyone take it? And Desiree or Jenny didn't take it, or at least they didn't admit to it. So I send our results out. And I'm like, all right, my parents are going to knock this down because I'm 100% Italian. Where did I get that information from? My parents, right? My mom folds over like a cheap fucking suit. So it had 20%. It was like Greek was the other part of it. The Greek islands. My mom goes, oh, very possible. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me at all. I'm like, wait a minute. I'm 48 fucking years old. All of a sudden, now I'm not 100. And they're rolling over like it's nothing, right? So I'm telling Angelo this. I'm like, Angelo, I got a story for you. You know, the 100%. I'm like, Angelo's as Italian as it gets. He speaks it, Italian.
Sure.
So he's going through the whole thing. And I hear I'm telling him the story. I hear dead silence on the other end. And I thought he'd be cracking up like everyone else that I told the story. I go, Ange, what do you think? Well, I didn't take it either. But Gina gave the test to my kids and Gina. So Gianluca, you think that's Italian?
Just a little bit.
Gianluca, I said, did it show that he's 50% or 100% Italian? No, he's 4% Asian. 4% Asian? How the hell did that happen? I have no idea. So I felt vindicated now that I'm not 100% Italian because John Lucas. So Angelo's got to be 8% Asian. So anyway, there's only downside to taking these tests, I think.
Well, certainly not to my credit, but we got this, and we started to look into it, and my daughter kept saying, you got to check this out. It's actually pretty interesting, and it's important to understand who your ancestry is. And she's right. She's 100% right. My position was this. My grandmother came over on a boat from Italy, Atri, Italy, in the Abruzzi region. She married my grandfather, who also came over from Italy and came before she did. My mother was conceived in Italy and born in the United States. She came over on the boat in my grandmother's belly. Okay?
See how these stories go deep.
Now, but you think about it, how much more Italian can you be if your mother and your father came from Italy to the United States and you came from both of them?
Right.
Which means that 50% of the blood that should be coursing through my veins should be Italian, and the other 50% should come from my father's side of the family. Well, some of that's true, but when I look at the amount of Italian in me, and that's easy for them to figure out from the spit test, it was relatively small. I mean, it was less than 30% or something, and the reason for it was my grandfather's people and my grandmother's people didn't all come from Italy and sleep with other Italians. Okay, so let's be honest. That's how this happens. Okay,
That's why you can have 4%. That's why Angelo's 8% and John Lucas 4%.
That's right. That's exactly. This network doesn't happen unless people are sleeping with each other. Okay, so
that's why Dominic's 40% Italian. And I'm expecting 50%.
So
you're doing the math on doubling.
Were you depressed when you found out that you were only 40% Italian? No, the answer's no.
So then we get into a mathematical conversation on text with my family. Well, how can Dominic? The math wasn't adding up to 100%, and so you gotta split it in half first because there's a male and a female, right? So that got into a mathematical discussion, and then people are debating the math, right?
It's a great story. It's that.
But I think I bet if you were to take a survey of male, there's a male-female dynamic. The females in the small little sample, Angela didn't give a shit about this thing, nor did I. But we got an opinion once we get it, right? Kim had to have the freaking test. And I'm like, there's only that. I don't want to know. I know I'm 100%. But she, by golly, had to get that freaking test. And then she's calling around. It's fascinating, the results. But it screws with yourself.
Laura, my daughter, understands all this stuff. My wife understands all this
stuff. Does Kyle have any interest?
Oh, boy.
Has he taken it?
If you were asking, if I knew for a fact, yes or no, I would say yes or no. I don't know. But if you're asking me to,
Laura's more
conjure up an answer, Kyle
test.
Probably kind of has my position on this. I got to cut the grass. I got to cut the grass. I gotta
live life here.
I gotta take the car in to get the oil changed. But Laura took that. And by the way, she schooled me. When you get the maps and all the different color, the different color sections all over the globe where your people came from. It's
supposedly it's accurate.
It is, and it's fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating, but I got about maybe 2 or 3 layers into it, and I just didn't do it anymore. I just didn't do it anymore. So, but
So anyway, that was I figured I didn't like you with the ancestry.
But I can tell you the musical background of Keith Richards anytime you like. I did a lot of studying on that.